Embedded metadata. What is embedded metadata? Embedded metadata is data that is embedded in your file. You probably know it. You probably have already dealt with this. My favorite example is a music file, MP3 file, title, artist, album. It's in the file. So what's the point of embedded metadata? Well, the cool thing is that it stays with your payload. You have your music, and you can copy paste it over, and regardless of which application people almost, it'll travel, and the file name may change, but the data is still in there. Okay. Why don't we trust that the file name would stay the same? In many cases it does, but actually the file name is not a good place to put metadata for several reasons. We've had this before. So, embedded metadata, awesome. Now, I have cases where I don't like to use embedded metadata because in order, how do you access the metadata, like the information that is embedded in a file? How do you do that? With your audio file, your image file, your video file, your construction plans, your office files, your anything. How do you deal with embedded metadata? You need an application, and that application has to understand the file format of whatever it is you were storing. So if you have an audio file and it's an MP3 or an MP4 audio file, they're both audio files. Yes, they're different encodings, but that's a matter of payload. But for the metadata tags, it's a different language. So an application that does MP3 and is like from the past can like not read and write MP4, even if not. Metadata tags, it'll just, you have to implement, not you, but I have, or others have to like support each new file format and also deal with how these tags are structured. And different file formats allow different tags, and some of them are structured and some of them are not. When we come to multimedia containers like MOV, AVI, Matroshka, MKV, MXF, 3GP, FLV, I could go on. There's like many multimedia containers. So that if you have a video file and it has a title of your video recording, that very often is like inside the video container. That's embedded metadata. And if you have an MXF file, which is very commonly used in broadcast and production, well, if you can put all kinds of stuff in there, not just like tags. How do we go on from here? I'd like to skip to the point again where I say imagine read and writing metadata that is currently embedded to stay with your payload during a file's lifecycle could be put on an object file system level. Because if the systems are implemented well, they can just keep that data. The reason why file names or timestamps of files sometimes get lost during their lifetime over systems is because there can only be one. Timestamps 3, but long story. File name and folder position, there can only be one. And you always, anyone who has that file right now has to decide where to put it and let go of the old structure. And where do you put that provenance information? Well, with an object storage file system properly implemented the way I suggested, there is no need to let go of that thing. And it's metadata, it's not a technical thing anymore. If you combine all data objects of the whole world, there should be no collisions. They can just coexist, and basically you'll apply different filters, different questions, different filters to this pool of objects to access the data that you want to find. And that is actually already being done. That's what cloud storage providers, they do. They're like, dude, put your files in there and we'll keep your file names, we'll keep your folder names, and we'll allow you to put tags and restructure them differently, but you can still find them. And they'll also read the embedded metadata tags, possibly, and put them also on an object file system level, because it's easier and faster, and then file formats don't matter anymore for plain tagging and metadata reasons. So imagine that. Imagine that if you choose a certain file format just because one can be tagged differently or can hold metadata attributes differently or better or other, or your application only supports that format tags and not the other one. With an object storage like this, it'd be on the file system level. It'd be like any developer of any application would be like, I don't want to care about the file format. Seriously, give me the tags and I can access them by default functions that I get in any programming library, any API. It'll just be as file names or folder names. So what's the point of embedded metadata if you can actually have the same reliability of, if a file system, you trust now that your payload stays intact, so your embedded metadata travels with it. If an object file system is embedded, like a landscape, like the whole environment over time is implemented in a way that goes like, yeah, actually it makes sense to its objects. Please make sure that they travel well from A to B. Don't touch that metadata unless you know what you're doing. If you don't have any reason to alter it, just keep it as it is. And if it's metadata you don't understand, why bother? Just keep it. I don't see any point in embedded metadata if I would have a file system capable of holding tags like that, or metadata.